let's get started, right? Let's get popping. So today we're going to talk about the 3 reasons weak people will get you killed. It's a presentation that I put together. It didn't take long to put together because these are things that I talk about all the single time. What I'm going to be doing is organizing a lot of these live feeds into a format that I could use. I'm going to download it to the YouTube page. I'll put it on the podcast feed on iTunes. I want more people to be able to ingest this. And I also want to make sure that it is presented in a format that's trackable. All that being said, every single one of these videos that I'm going to do, whether it's the Pressure Project podcast, Pressure Project radio, which is the 3-hour show that I do with Pat on Wednesdays, or these live feeds, there is going to be a corresponding show notes page for this on thepressureproject.com. Okay, so just to remind you guys, the pressure, I wish I typed more effectively, right? So the pressureproject.com is the website that all of this stuff is stored on. Even though I leave it up on Facebook because I like preserving the comments, I like you guys to be able to go back and reference something either that you remembered from the show or that you wrote a comment, and a lot of conversations continue well beyond the live feeds ending, but that's that. But all that being said, when it comes to the 3 reasons weak people get killed, there are 3 main things. Obviously there are a shitload more than just 3 reasons why hanging out with weak people is going to get you in trouble. And what I'm referring to here is, although there are probably more conceptual applications beyond just hanging out with somebody like out in public who's just weak as fuck. And that is, I guess, what we'll explore that. But the basis for this, the actual description that I'm going to use to illustrate these things is it's you, somebody else just navigating the world from day to day, and they're weak and you are not. And the reasons why that is something that we should all look to avoid. Okay, so let's get into the list. All right, so the 3 reasons. All right, reason number 3. Okay. Actually, I misnumbered this. I guess it's really not going to be a big deal, but I put number 1, but I meant it to be a countdown, but you guys understand the deal. Whatever. The first reason, the first of 3. They're like toilet paper in the rain. Now, what the hell do I mean by that? Just imagine you were a roll of toilet paper, right? Just go with me for a second. You guys should be used to me by now. You're a roll of toilet paper, and you venture on out into the world. And as you are about to leave your domicile, right, your whatever kind of house toilet paper is going to have, you open the door and you realize it's raining. It's a storm. It's coming down. Think about what would go through your mind. I understand we're suspending some disbelief here. Just go with it for a second. You are made of toilet paper. You're about to walk outside and it is raining. Think about how you do not want to leave the home. Think about how just vulnerable you are, susceptible to the outside influence, right? The outside effects of what that rain is. That is exactly what I mean by they're like toilet paper in the rain. So the reason we don't want to hang out with weak people, and the reason why weak people will get you killed, is they are not capable, right? They are not physically capable. They go outside every single day knowing full well that they are not going to be able to be feeders. They go outside intimidated. They go outside scared and apprehensive, right? And they're going to make sure that when they go outside, they're going to want to sort of avoid these sorts of conflicts that we know are the very basis of anything that amounts to progress in one's life, right? It's pressure to power, right? And number 1 is they're like toilet paper in the rain. They know they're weak, and they will make everything around them weaker because they have to, right? There was a meme and a shirt that Anthony, one of my guys, made a shirt of this quote I said, a few years back. And it said, the one thing you could always count on weak people for is for them to do everything in their ability to make you just as weak as they are, right? A more common term, misery loves company. But understand that when somebody's super, super weak and incapable, they're not going to want to sort of walk around with a bunch of mirrors reminding them of how weak they are. Along with that, they're going to make sure everything in their environment is not capable of exploiting, the fact that they lack the strength to really be a feeder, right? That sort of alpha energy that all of us try to harness, right, in different applications, right? So first of the three, they're like toilet paper in the rain. Okay, number two, they want to live forever. Okay, now if I actually did a little bit more homework, I'd actually write down the Braveheart speech, but I think it's probably a good call that I'm not doing that Braveheart speech. I do not do a very good Scottish accent, and you need to do that speech justice. But the point is, these people will run in a heartbeat. And by run in a heartbeat, sure, the actual direct, literal application of that is you are in a physical conflict in the real world. You look over and they are gone. Why are they gone? Because the only thing important to them is lasting another day, living another moment. It's part of the reason why they're weak in the first place. We know that in order to gain power, right, we need to endure some sort of pressure. We need to go through some adversity. We need to overcome and sort of, cut our teeth on the types of experiences that somebody who wants to avoid, that type of stress by any means necessary is never going to engage. So, of course they're going to run. Why? Because that is what's a weak person. That is part of their formula, right? It is very much congruent with somebody who is weak, somebody who is like toilet paper in the rain, somebody who knows that they want to be around everything that is just as weak as them, because in that case, they're not going to be exploited. They're also not going to be reminded of their ineptness, right, of their frailty, their weakness, their lack of power, right? So these people want to live forever. I've always said, as much as it's hard to sort of balance this in our minds, I've given this a lot of thought, and a lot of times, I try to sort of not sort of make things black and white, but sort of reduce things to these universal formulas that allow me to avoid and navigate around the admitted weaknesses of my own biases, right? So I remember there was a video clip of a black science guy, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson went to one of the high schools that I went to, Bronx High School of Science. Smart dude, terrible politics, smart dude nonetheless. And he was talking to, I think it was Larry King, right? Old guy, does the interviews at CNN, used to be. And he had asked him, he was trying to sort of, speak on a broader point of maybe our place in the universe or whatever the case was. But he had asked him, if you could live forever, would you? And Larry King immediately said, well, yeah, absolutely. And Neil deGrasse Tyson was like, all right, well, I guess the interview's over. Well, the whole thing is, and I bet you that Neil deGrasse Tyson didn't even expect that much of an abrupt sort of reply from Larry King, because it's not so much of a gimme that some people think it is. I've had to actually learn that in my dealings with people and sort of seeing how they will sacrifice every bit of honor and every bit of their reputation just to sort of survive the moment. And there have been plenty of times where, I've been in a situation where it would have been much easier for me to just sort of, back my way out of an obligation and a commitment, sort of not get somebody's back in a situation. Those of you that know me outside of this or have been following me for a long time, and I'm not going to get into details, that I've been sued by people because of sort of my commitment to speaking my mind and doing what I feel is right. So right or wrong, we could debate another day, but the one thing you'll never question with me is my commitment. I'm as loyal as the day is long, and I don't bail on my guys. When we look at, people that want to live forever, if you look at just the general concept, the idea of scarcity, right? What gives something valuable? The demand is there, right? It exists. And the supply is limited. It's restricted. The more you increase that demand, the more valuable it becomes. With an existing demand, the greater you increase the scarcity, right, of that thing, the greater the value. So if you're talking about somebody who's living forever, well, they have an endless supply of life. And it's a flawed mindset. It's a flawed approach to how we live. Number one, none of us are making it out of this alive, right? That's the cliche saying. But if you're talking about how to value every day that we have, every moment we have, be closer than that or more zeroed in than that, we know that we have to understand that scarcity is very much a component of how we should value our decisions, our movements, our friends, our connections, the things that we do, the things that we don't do. It really, you have to place that sort of that lens of scarcity on that, because it's limited. So these people that sort of live their lives like they're going to live forever, it is not only illogical, it's ineffective, because you are, saving your life and your resources for an existence that's not going to be there past a certain point, right? And we know that to be true. Maybe not directly having sort of dissected it like we just did, but if you think about it, the guys that will do anything just to sort of get out alive, the guys, like we call them cowards, we call them traitors, turncoats. We have all of these phrases to describe them, within, Western civilization, I'll say, right? So number two, they want to live forever. Now, the last reason that weak people will get you killed, they are designed to be dysfunctional, okay? So now this is barring the admitted possibility, expectation or hope, I'll say, that weak people do look to sort of change their identity from weak to strong. Remember how we defined weak now, right? And this is always a distinction I have to make when dealing with a lot of my content, because people come in with their own definitions of words, and it's very easy to get tripped up in anybody's worldview or philosophy when you come in defining your own terms the way that you want. So the way that we, I and the Pressure Project defines weakness is somebody who refuses to climb the ladder of strength, the ladder of personal development, the ladder of personal power. Somebody who knows it's safe to stay on the rung that they are on, and what eventually will happen, and it's pretty much an expected occurrence, is eventually their values start to promote denigrating or insulting or mocking the people who do climb, right? We don't want to sort of give acknowledgement, credibility, status to somebody who is facing adversity if we ourselves are, risk adverse, right? Completely against taking chances and putting ourselves through conflict and struggle, right? So that's what you see in those people. So when I say they are designed to be dysfunctional, you have to understand there is no place in a functional formula where weak people fit, right? So I'm not talking about kids and retards, right? Kids and retards, they're absolved, all right? And you could get all huffy-puffy about the term, that I use, but I call them kids, right? Just fucking with you. But when I say they're dysfunctional and they don't fit in a formula, you have to understand, you go back 100 years ago, certainly beyond that, right? Earlier in the human timeline than that, these people do not even exist. They don't even exist. There is no sort of life, there is no journey for somebody who is opposed or refrains from overcoming adversity. All right, there is no point. Now, certainly, we could talk about, the rich prince, who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and was coddled. Like, the exceptions prove the rule in this case. There is no way that you're going to navigate a natural journey, a natural life. If you've watched Function First on the website, you know what I'm talking about. There's no way you're going to navigate that and also be adverse and opposed to overcoming adversity. There's just, that's not something that is going to work. And prior to our modern society, it never did, right? And I don't think it's too much of a stretch for us to wrap our heads around that. So, why will weak people get you killed? They're designed to be dysfunctional. And what the application for modern day where that's concerned is you are filling your tribe, or you're attempting to establish a tribe with people who can't establish a functional tribe. Okay. It's like building a house of cards, right? You are not going to fulfill the functional identity of a house if you are using cards to make it. Hence the phrase house of cards, right? House of cards equals tribe of weaklings, right? Tribe of unicorns, right? These things are synonymous, right? They're a parallel situation, right? So just to review, I want to go over a quick review over these three. So the three reasons weak people will get you killed. We said number one, they're like toilet paper in the rain. What was I saying? They know they're weak, and they will do everything in their ability to make everything around them weaker because they have to, right? They don't have a choice. They do not have a choice. Number two of three, they want to live forever. These are people that as soon as the going gets tough, they are getting the fuck out of there, and that's not somebody you want to be around. It's not somebody that you even want to invest the time and resources to establishing what you see as being an alliance, but ultimately is something that's doomed to fail, right? Because they want to live forever. And we know nothing of value is an endless supply, right? And lastly, number three of three, they are designed to be dysfunctional. If this were 100 years ago or earlier than that, they wouldn't even be here, right? They wouldn't even be here. It is a testament to the strength of our society that these people are even taken care of, right, by circumstances. So I hope that was pretty clear for you guys. I want to open it up now to a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions at all, obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased towards what I just went over, but we usually sort of segue into other topics. A lot of stuff going on in the world right now. So have at it. What do we got here? Okay. I'm looking. You guys have a lot of comments. Aaron Alejandro, what's up, brother? He says, stats on dying are pretty impressive. 1 out of 1 people die. Life is a breath. Live like a warrior. I agree. I absolutely agree. Brandon says, without sacrifice, man cannot excel at life, right? And sacrifice is, when you talk about, if you guys follow the loyalty matrix, you know that when we talk about sacrifice, we talk about somebody committing himself to legacy and understanding that the resources, even up to and including his own life, are a component of his role, his job, his obligation. And his life can absolutely be spent, in the fulfillment of that, because ultimately filling somebody's role and filling somebody's role functionally is what somebody who's dedicated to tribe is going to pursue, right? They don't care if it costs them their life. And for the people who want to debate that, just think about your kids, right? Because that's a no-brainer. That's something that it just draws a line in the sand that everybody understands what side they're on. And you don't want to be the guy arguing that you wouldn't die for your kids, right? So, but that's exactly what you're doing conceptually. And if you're saying, oh, well, I would die for my kids, but I wouldn't die for somebody else, well, now we're just talking, application. We're talking concept. So it's a different debate entirely, right? But I agree with you, Brandon. Very, very, very good. All right. Carlos says, ran out of toilet paper. That's exactly what happens to them. They run out. Ryan says, great stuff, MC. Thank you. Side note, my grandmother was kicked out of my crew. I know that it sounds like there's a story behind that. Feel free to type it down because I'm a nosy bastard. All All right. Gabriel says, toilet paper in the rain, I want to live forever, designed to be dysfunctional. That's going to my Master Chim notebook. Thank you for that. Well, I thank you for having a Master Chim notebook. One of the things that I really get a kick out of is when I see people using this stuff. I think worth mentioning is, so much of what I design and share, the thing that really, pushes my content out there is just me sort of getting a grip on and understanding my own experience. There's not one thing that I talk about that I didn't struggle with, usually at a very high level, at some point in my history, right? The school, my academy was a great laboratory for that because I learned how to mishandle people there. I learned how to coddle people there. I learned how to treat people properly from step one to invest and disarm eventual, obstacles in our relationship. And it was a learning process and, dealing with this sort of dynamic, dance of all these different identities, within my academy, it proved to be a very, very, powerful laboratory for me. Right. So one of the things, I say, I admit it, fully is just because, I'm talking about these things from a perspective of authority, right, or expertise. Number one, believe me, it's something that I've struggled with before. But number two, also don't assume that it's something that I've completely, overcome. As much as I talk about, I have an episode, Haters, in the podcast. If you guys haven't seen it, you absolutely should, because there's a formula there for dealing with, like, when and how to deal with people who are outside of your tribe, inside of your tribe, when they are, getting in your way or causing conflict. Listen, there's at least a half a dozen times a week I'm talking myself out of knocking some dude out somewhere, just because of my utter disgust and contempt for how people navigate, society these days. But I have to remind myself, I forget what movie it was from, or maybe it was from a TV show. Me and my guys always laugh about it because it was like one of those GIF files that you could just share alone. And it's a guy going to touch a girl's ass, right? So you just see an ass, right? And the camera's like over his shoulder. He's going to touch her ass. And then it says, don't touch the girls on his hand. And then it fades to his face. And he goes, oh, like that's right. Like he had to remind himself. Well, I have that a lot of times. And usually I'm the one that writes it on my hand based on a formula that I, developed and discovered. All right. What else is going on here? All right. Big Keith, what's going on, brother? He says, a man that lives a good, productive life and surrounds himself with strength and honor might be the only way to actually live forever. Well, it's something that I talk about all the time. I think somebody wrote it earlier as I was talking. I saw the scroll, a strong legacy and a good death. I've always said, those are my life goals. Strong legacy and a good death. Seems simple, and I guess to some extent it is. But when you sort of peel back what those two things mean, you sort of realize that they have some roads ahead of them. This isn't just a gimme. It's, before I die, I press these two buttons and I'm good to go. But in Keith's quote, and I'll deal with that, he says, a man that lives a good, productive life. Well, good is really a reference to an in-tribe value system, right? Virtues determined by the people that are in your tribe, good and bad, as opposed to people who think, in terms of good and evil. And Nietzsche deals with this a lot. And, you want to get away from calling things evil because it's sort of like this universal morality of there's some things that are evil no matter what. And it's just not the case. And it really doesn't take much to sort of break that down when you think about it. But a good, productive life, good meaning in tribe, productive meaning creating value for your tribe, right? We say, what's the component or what's the description of a good leader? A leader is somebody who inspires his followers to fight for their tribe's immortality, right? Well, productive is really allowing that to occur, right? It's making that happen in some case. And it could be, not getting in the way of the movement of the tribe. It could be helping create the next generation. It could be, enforcing the rituals by just participating, right? Sometimes it's the omission of being in another tribe, that allows you to help a tribe move along. whatever the case is, there are a lot of different ways to be productive. Surrounds himself with strength and honor. Strength, we know, the ability to overcome adversity. Honor, another in tribe, sort of currency of virtue, might be the only way to actually live forever, right? And I've always said, when we look at legacy, we're a link in a chain with links before us and links to come after us. And, that's the way all of us should look at our lives. I think we tend to aim a little bit higher in the sky when we realize how much power we came from and how many people are actually relying on us to sort of not fuck it up, right? The other day, I don't know if you guys have seen, in my gym, I have a water bag, right? And it's a 300-pound water bag, heavy as fuck. And the other day, I walk in the main room, and those are my students that are on here. They say, you probably saw the water bag on the floor. And I'm like, fuck, what happened? Did the chain break? And the chain didn't break. What actually happened was there was a strong, strong chain, which is, why I was confused as to why it was on the ground. But I remember at the last second when we were putting the bag up, we used a carabiner. And this specific carabiner had a, obviously a weight capacity that could not handle the weight of the bag and its use. So that broke. Right? You don't want to be that sort of carabiner in the chain of your life, because I remember what I said in the beginning of this story, the bag was on the floor, right? It was not functional any longer, right? So it's certainly something to think about. All right, what else we have here? Richard Bowman says, what's up, Richard? He says, 2,500 years on men maybe, still speak of the exploits of Achilles, who chose a short life of glory over a long life of obscurity. No one remembers the name of the man who stayed home. And it was a great scene in Troy. Brad Pitt played Achilles. And, he said to the little pauper boy, little farmer boy, that's why no one will ever know your name. And that's it. That's it in a nutshell. I remember a few years back, I think it was actually here in Pennsylvania, there was a young man. There was a young man that I think his family lived in a trailer, and it had caught fire, and he had woken up, and he had to be like maybe 8 or 9 years old, and he was getting his family members out of the house. He went back in. Super tragic story. I'm going to say it quickly because I always get fucking emotional when I think about it. I'm trying not to get triggered on a live video, but he went back in to save his grandfather, and he just wasn't big enough. And they found his corpse on his grandfather's corpse, in the burnt, remnants of the house. And this young man, here I am talking about him now, adding power to his legacy, adding power to the legend of what he's done. There are people who live to 100 years old that, nobody outside of, visual contact ever even remembers they existed, so we need to think in terms of, this chain, because we really don't get obsessed with the length of the link, when we do, right? Sam Stern in the house. He says, MC, what are the top 3 traits when you see identifying weak people? Okay, reading that fucked up. What are the top 3 traits you see when identifying weak people? So, I'm not going to hold myself to a top 3 traits because I do a little work when I put these lists together. I just don't think of the first 3. But when I'm looking and identifying weak people, one of the first things you'll get is you'll get the recruitment, right? At some point when dealing with somebody who's weak, and it could be they're weak, but unfortunately sometimes it could be they're intimidated. You'll get this sort of recruitment where they'll recruit you to either acknowledge or participate in something, if dissected, is completely and obviously weak. Like one of the things, and you men that are listening to this right now, please take my advice. if for no other reason than one day you and I will be hanging out, and I never want you to do this. The guy that makes the joke, you know, I don't know, I got to go talk to the boss, and he's talking about his wife. She wears the pants and don't fucking do that. That is pathetic. It's pathetic, and it's not some rah-rah macho, men are the bosses, women are, it has nothing to do with that. It is not your role. You are not exposing or illustrating or demonstrating any virtue by saying that your wife or girlfriend has authority over you. There's no way to look at that as being something that you've accomplished. Being a feeder, right, it's a Sayak, Kali term, and it means being the person that, sets events in motion. The guy who is, conducting the orchestra. Well, there is no way to feed while assigning authority to your significant other. There is no way to do that. So I think, and I'm probably going to just sum it up as this one for now, Sam. Maybe I'll get into it in more detail with a little more preparation, wanting to do a good job. But this is the one thing, right off the top of my head, sort of rose to the top. It's when these people say things and they give you the look, and they want you to go, yeah, I know, or, laugh. And what that is a sort of pass for them. You're giving them a pass. You're saying, I see it as they have so much shit that they're worried that you're going to call them on. They sort of throw out a flare just to sort of see what's going on. And if they get a pass, then they'll feel comfortable that the rest of it will probably slide under the radar. But that's something that I absolutely detest. There's no good joke for being weak. Self-deprecating humor is a little bit different. I do it all the time. Sometimes I do it because, especially when I'm rocking my big winter beard, I scare the shit out of people all the time. I don't want to. It's not my intention. I don't need to. I'm a personable guy, right? I like cracking jokes. But sometimes I'll make a joke about myself just to sort of calm everybody else down. Different intention, I think, and different, application when done, All right. What else we got here? Big Sean says, love that chain analogy. And it's one that I stick to. It's my staple of when I'm talking about and trying to illustrate what legacy is. All right, what else we got here? Ryan says, what are some ways you can empower a weak person you care about? So understand that, when you talk about the phrase that you've heard me use on the podcast, I've had Two on Tom talking about it before in the past of, there are no victims, only volunteers. As much of a sort of triggering phrase that is, and it triggers the fuck out of people, let me tell you, I'm sure you can imagine, as much as that is part of it, or part of its effect, its intent is really the sort of defense and the preservation of the affected person's power. So when we're saying there are no victims, only volunteers, we're saying that happened, but you decided it happened because under no circumstances did anybody ever take away your power to decide, right? So even in a case where, everybody wants to paint the sort of paint somebody with the victim brush, we refuse to do it, and it's another, Sayak methodology of seeing an individual's power. Ryan, to your question, what are some of the ways you can empower a weak person you care about? The reason I led with that is, first and foremost, you have to understand that it's not up to you. It's always going to be up to them. And if you can't, let's say there is a food dish, right? You have a food dish that is amazing, right? You think it's amazing. Everybody else thinks it's amazing. And you want your good friend, let's say your wife, you want your wife to try out this amazing dish. You can't make her try it. You can't force her to try it. The very act of demanding and forcing somebody to do something taints their association with it right from the beginning. But in lieu of that, what would happen? How would we convince somebody to try this thing that we know is that they're going to enjoy, they're going to love, it's delicious, but we can't tell them to do it? We talk about how we like it. We have other people describe it. There's something in marketing, and you run a website and a podcast, you know this, social proof. Why? When you look at, advertisements, you'll see all the people that have tried the service or product before and are saying, hey, you don't know me, but I look like a regular person and it's fucking amazing. You should give that guy your money. Like, why does that happen? Why does that work on our psychology? Because it allows us to sort of make our own decisions still. There is no authority. There's no demanding that we do something, because that taints the very association that somebody's trying to construct positively right from the beginning. So if you're trying to empower a weak person, they need to understand what are the benefits of having that power. What are the benefits of following a tribe, that holds that type of powerful approach to life and living as virtuous. You want a crew that says do the right thing. You don't want a crew that is always looking to make poor decisions that affect everybody. Right? Because remember what I said earlier in the presentation, when you have somebody that's weak, a lot of times they're going to do whatever it takes to make everything around them weak also, because they don't want to face that mirror every day of their life. Right? Facing that mirror is confronting adversity, which at the core is what they're not good at, right? By definition. All right, hope that helped. All right, else what we've got here. Dave Martell in the house. What's up, brother? All right, Dave Martell. Can a physically weak man with great presence and character be considered strong? Would you say he has equal amounts of worth to a tribe as a warrior? Absolutely. And I'll give you a quick story that I told my students on multiple occasions. The last time, just a few days ago, at my last promotions, we were talking about black belts and how I see a black belt, and prefacing this whole thing with a talk on the apprentice mentor model that has completely been thrown away with by so much of our society. Our society still hasn't really adapted to the sort of technology that it has as its disposal. We're suddenly thinking that universal laws, of how we are to interact with one another don't matter anymore, when it's really just the application that's changing. But all that being said, I spoke about how, everybody has an idea about what a black belt is supposed to be in martial arts. My black belts are all killers. My black belts, and you'll see people that really pride themselves on having black belts that are very proficient fighters. And listen, to each his own, right? It's fucking your house, paint whatever fucking color you want. My thing is, what happens then when this guy becomes old? Do you take the black belt away from him? Do you say he's less of a black belt? Is he a modified black belt? Does he understand that he's no longer a black belt? Like, how does that work? And if somebody says, no, well, we let him have it because, he could fight at one point in his history, I would then ask, so if you have somebody who, let's say this guy could fight before and now he's 70, and you have another guy that joined at 60 and was never able to fight, but at 70, he and that other 70-year-old have the same sort of role in the level of hierarchy in the tribe, have the same ability to create the next generation, have the same physical ability at their age at that time. They have the same grasp of the information in their ability to convey it to others. Like, what exactly is the distinction that you're making? And is that based on any functional merit system? So I contend that there is no reason to just sort of think of fighter points, an accumulation of fighter points when you're trying to determine when somebody's a black belt. And if you have somebody that is not as physically imposing, but can absolutely get to the point where they can create that next generation of students, or talking about the apprentice mentor model, the apprentice master model, right? We say somebody's a master carpenter. We say somebody's a master jeweler, a master craftsman, a master, well, what does master mean? Master isn't referring to their ability to fuck other, carpenters up, or like master is talking about a level of proficiency in their ability to apply it, but really in their ability to, when they lose their ability to apply it, to still take in an apprentice and pass that on to somebody else. So can a physically weak man with great presence of character be considered strong? Absolutely, because physically weak is a relative term. There's people like, I go and look at the gym every day, and if I wanted to be a dick, I go, you're weak, you're weak, you're weak, you're weak, you're weak, you're weak. There are people, there are gyms that I walk into where a guy will see me lifting, and I'll go, you're weak, get out of my fucking way. It's a very relative term. So when you're talking about presence and character and these types of attributes, I think you understand you're talking about something that with dedication and commitment is always going to improve as you accumulate more experience and more of a deeper relationship, with the tribe and its mission. All right. Hope that answered that. All right, here's Colin. Legacy is bullshit. Starting off strong, you fuck. All right. All right, let's deal with Colin's comment. I haven't read it yet. It's too fucking long, but I'm going to read it now because I like you, Colin. Legacy is bullshit. The only souls that enjoy your legacy, if you have one, are those who live beyond you. In reality, we live in a world of almost infinite possibilities. Yet most fail to realize that in life. Yet in death, so many seem convinced that some part of them is infinite and lives on to enjoy their legacy. They live wrongly and they die wrong. Such is life. Okay. So obviously, I don't agree with you, Colin. I think we probably have some middle ground on this that if we were to explore it a little bit more, I think we could probably, flesh that out a bit. But I'd say that when people think of purpose, I would actually, ironically, I think that the direction that some of what you're saying moves in is sort of falls under the sort of criticism that you're making. I think that people that think their purpose is determined by their decision making or their exposure to certain influences and desires. I don't think, and maybe this is a little bit of a dumbed down analogy, but just to get to the point and move from there, a hammer, right? A hammer is never going to be a screwdriver. It's a hammer, and no matter what you do with it, it is not a screwdriver. A car is not a plane. In their identities, you have, in their states, you have an innate purpose. And when I'm looking at, what a person's purpose is, I think we tend to think a little bit, and I saw Dave Martell wrote, nihilist or nihilism. It's a very, very, I'd say, incomplete perspective. One of the things about Nietzsche always got, called a nihilist. Nothing matters why? Because he was condemning Christianity. He was talking about something that a lot of people couldn't connect to. But I think when you talk about purpose, there is a sort of next level. I do think that we're evolving, right? So I'm not so ignorant as to, or short-sighted as to think that, from the primordial ooze to us, that there isn't some version, that length on the timeline away from where we are now. Absolutely. If we survive as a species, then we could evolve to that. Number one, we're not there yet. There are things we cannot even conceptualize, right? Because our brains just can't fucking handle it. We all want to be smarter, but we're limited by our hardware, in a lot of cases. But I think that, there is a formula that allows that to eventually happen. And I think that formula just happens to be, congruent with what I describe in terms of legacy. He says, you wrote, yet in death, so many seem convinced that some part of them is infinite and lives on to enjoy their legacy. I think that there's no parts necessarily of an individual that is infinite in terms of their individual identity. There are a bunch of different ways you could look at this. I mean, you could look at this through the eye of a physicist, right, or a chemist even, and he'll tell you that matter is matter and it's there and it's going to be there no matter what, right? We're made of star stuff. I think it was Sagan said during the Cosmos series. But when we look at what we do have the ability to affect and sort of invest in, legacy is definitely a component of it. You see a lot of people today, especially people who, white people, who talk about, how so much of Western society is being tainted by this disdain for white people and whiteness, and how there is a fight, to maintain that, and I think at the heart of why people want to sort of maintain, or why people want to have a pride in who they are, like, why is it that we make any decisions in our attempt to affect another person's perception of us if we are not concerned about the ripples we send out, into, our reality, right? Why are we not concerned about it? Maybe it's not something we articulate, but we make decisions every single day that affect how other people interpret and process our presence and our investment in them, right? This is a long conversation we could have. You might just be busting my fucking balls. I don't know. But great topic nonetheless. I appreciate the comment. Big Chad says, tribes tend to be strong, with society leaning toward weakness. Isn't the UK incident an example of this, with tolerating incompatible people running amok? Well, I'm glad somebody finally brought that shit up. So let's start from the beginning. If your tribe is destroyed, there are no victims, only volunteers. If people enter into your tribe and attack members of your tribe being people that are not only inside the wall, but people who actively, as a component of their identity, pursue the mission of the collective. Right? If you are somebody who is attacked and victimized by this foreign body, there are no victims, only volunteers. It is your fault. If you're walking down the street and somebody screams, Aloha Snack Bar, and they run you over with their car, they initiated the events, but ultimately there were decisions you could have made prior to that to avoid being there at that time in that predicament. Again, it is your fault. When I'm looking at how people process these things, and I think that this is a big hurdle that so many people can't get over. Now, there are people all the way on the left that at some point, I think it's just inevitable. There's going to be we're just going to not allow them a seat at the adult table. And maybe a conflict will ensue, as a result of that. But they're proving more and more their, lack of ability or their inability to participate productively in decisions that, govern our society. But he says tribes tend to be strong, with society leaning toward weakness. I would say the tribe in and of itself is a formula to be strong. It's a formula that's designed around creating a synergy, amongst its components to allow people to better leverage their resources to thrive, right? Or at a very minimum to survive, right? So is this an example of people tolerating incompatible people running amok? There is a dysfunction because we permit dysfunction. There is a dysfunction because there is no consequence to sort of right the ship. There are things like you go outside and it's 100 degrees outside and a beaming sun, and you sit on a chair for 4 hours, with no shirt on, you're going to get burned. Nothing in how you feel about that situation is going to change the physics of what's going to occur. And that very fundamental, just basic level of respect for reality is being just completely ignored in society these days. Whether, you think all Muslims are bad, you don't think Muslims are bad, you think, Islam is a religion of peace, you don't think, like, whatever your opinion on it, at the end of the day, there are going to be scenarios that have certain probabilities of occurring. And the information, I'm arguing, was available to determine the probabilities of these things happening way before they happened. And there needn't even be a value judgment on the individual identities involved in these determinations, right? These equations. We just need to look at what's happening and understanding it's going to happen again. These are the things that happened prior to this incident occurring. These things haven't gone away. They like it's almost math when we're looking at it. And I think that you have a lot of people that are saying that math is no longer needed because math is mean. And I think it's obviously a weak, dysfunctional outlook. And the more people that we allow to think that way and affect decisions that affect all of us, the more we deserve what happens to us. It is what it is. I used to live in a neighborhood where every once in a while you get a guy who would just sort of be aggressive at a dysfunctional level, right? You'd have a guy every once in a while who really wanted to be tough, but went beyond the acquisition of status amongst the people in the neighborhood. He was just into extra, and I'm thinking about one person in particular. The neighborhood found a way to put him back in line. And it was something that was just sort of mutually understood before anybody there was no, conspiring behind closed doors to sort of make sure this guy respected the neighborhood. It was, well, of course, this guy's got to get checked. It's a phrase I talk about all the time. As soon as you think you're untouchable, that's when you're going to get touched. And that's something I think we need to remind ourselves of. And it's like, you have the guy in outside of the UK Parliament that's mowing people over with his car. It's hard to stop that, by the way. Very hard to stop somebody wanting to just take his car and just hang a right or a left and mow people down. Pretty much anybody with a driver's license has the ability to kill people every single day. And, so what decisions do we make to lower that probability, right? We can't take away all cars because I don't think that captures the distinction between a properly run formula and a dysfunctional one. And obviously, I think when you look at society now, you look at people who come from these Muslim nations, the just sort of aggression that goes behind so much of the rhetoric from a lot of the people from the world of Islam. I think, look what they're saying, look what they're doing, look what happens. Yeah, this is the consequence of that. And we could sit there and not want to offend a couple of people. Who's offended? That guy the family of the guy who was like in the UK for like his fucking 15th wedding anniversary or something, 25th wedding anniversary, that got killed. I'm sure his family's offended right now. But we should care about all the other Muslims more than the people who lost their fucking family member, right? Like, that doesn't fucking make sense. Look when the incident happened. How long did it take for everybody to find out how many people died? Why the fuck was there such a delay? Who were they worried about upsetting? We know the deal. This is like the same old fucking thing over and over again. I was waiting for, and some of you guys showed it, and I don't hold it against you. But I'm done with the fucking, was a South Park meme, and it's Muslims, yeah, look, we've made this a joke. We've made this something that's like this sort of pop cultured meme Where look, the Muslim killed a guy joke or killed a guy meme, and everybody's gonna know what you're talking about, and like that's where we are right now. We have pop cultured memes that describe Muslims killing people. Like this is fucking baffling. But people's standards are just so fucking upside down today. All right, I'm missing more shit. Let me see what's going on. Captain Corney says people without driver's licenses as well. I agree. Anybody that gets in a car, they're good. All right. Pete Sabatini, what's up, Big Pete? He says feminized culture, no matter how advanced, ends up yielding and being overtaken by more aggressive culture, no matter how backwards it is. It's the bear in the woods, metaphor I talk about. People talk about human rights. Like, these are my human rights. Bernie Sanders, that fucking, don't even get me started on that fucking asshole. Healthcare is a basic human right. I don't do the voice very well. But because it gets real Jewy really quick. So it's like, I'm not even doing a Bernie Sanders voice. I'm just doing that, which means that's how I label him, which is another podcast entirely. That being said, you're in the woods and you happen upon a bear. That bear's looking at you like you're lunch. Every right that you have at that very moment is your list of human rights in their entirety. You have the right to run left. You have the right to run right. You have the right to scream. You have the right to turn around and run, to hide, to attack, to cry, to shit yourself. Because these are the decisions that are at your fingertips every single waking moment of your life. But no matter what people think society is going to do, it's sort of like when you have people that play the stock market, right? Now, there's some people who are definitely better than others. Some people consistently make money for a whole slew of reasons. But the average guy that goes into the stock market is like the guy that's figured out the energy of the roulette table, right? So I'm not talking about any of the guys that is fucking working angles and have a guy on the inside. I'm not talking about any of that. Just in a general sense. We all know, or we've all even gone through this at one point, where we think we're in touch with some energy that's talking to us, and we've got this whole thing figured out. And the guy loses his fucking mortgage payment. And the guy loses the fucking title to his car. And the guy loses his wedding ring. It's you have this this component of who so many people are. I think all of us have it to some degree, where we think that we are going to change the nature of reality, because we really, really want it to change, right? And I think, getting to Pete's comment, no matter how advanced a feminized, weak culture is, you are vulnerable. You are vulnerable to an invading force. You are vulnerable to disease. You are vulnerable to natural disaster. It doesn't take much, in this reality to end you, So having an identity that has as a component of it the ability to navigate and overcome those, curveballs that reality throws at us is going to be a better formula in the long run, But I agree. And, talking about feminized culture, no matter how advanced it is, ends up yielding and being overtaken by a more aggressive culture, no matter how backwards it is. And you probably meant this in the way that I'm going to, describe it or explain it. This is what's happening with the invasion in Europe and, what so many politicians on the left are trying to facilitate here by, just fucking importing these migrants. It's doesn't matter how backwards they are, they will run shit. Why? Because they will push back on every single law, rule, governing body, figure of authority. They're going to have more kids than everybody around them. They're going to bleed any social programs of funds. How many times are we seeing guys who, migrants here, a couple years, they have this wife on welfare, they got that wife on welfare, they're collecting for themselves, they got this angle. It's a system. They come here and they learn how to work, and good for them. Why? Not good for us, but good for them. Why? because they learned how to do it and it was possible, and we let it be done. If you're a father that, you tell your daughter, like, listen, hey, go get drunk. You're going to that party? Yeah, go down 2 blocks and I'll pick you up on that dark alley where none of the lights work. And your daughter gets raped. Yeah, asshole, that's what happens. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, well, no, this is what happens. Look at all the things that you allowed to happen prior to that, that I would say, we could blame you, for. All right, just a couple more. Dave asked, do you do call-ins? Not in this format. When I do the radio show on Wednesdays, we have call-ins. When I do the there's another format that I do that I have call-ins. I'm probably going to. I use a service right here. You guys can probably see it. Where is it? It's right here. Right. This service, Be Live, is a pretty new service, video service that allows people to do live streaming on Facebook, and it has a bunch of features that are not found anywhere else at this level of production, at least. And they're going to be adding different features. So when you see this little thing here, that means I'm using the Be Live software, and I do not have the ability to take call-ins. Eventually, when you stop seeing this, or when you see me doing a live show where I don't have this, chances are I do have call-ins available, because I'll be using a third-party software and piping in Skype or Blog Talk Radio and what have you. All right, but thank you for that. Right, Shay just said it. Call-ins on Pressure Project Radio on Woden's Day, aka Wednesday. All right, let me get one more. Richard Bowman says, the Roman Empire, prior to its fall, viewed the barbarians in a similar manner as the West currently views the Muslims, as an acceptable inconvenience that by and large deserves and desires integration into our society, regardless of every countersignal to the contrary. And as Rome burned, the rest is history. You are absolutely right. And it's unfortunate how almost cliche it's becoming for us to describe what we see as the next empire to fall. Very much like Rome in its day. It's something that people like me, people like a lot of you guys, we're not going to ever accept in a sort of submissive, passive sense. We're going to deal with whatever realities outside of our door when we open it in the morning. But it is slowly becoming a fight, more and more of a fight for our very existence, I would argue. I think that there are powers behind the curtain that very much want to see sort of able-bodied, independent thinkers that have a connection to their people, to their folk, that they very much want to see these things, these identities, these tribes completely disbanded, because it makes things a lot easier. And they have their sort of attack dogs attacking all the countries in the process to make that happen, I would argue. All right, guys. But I'm going to end it there. This is a great conversation. I'm glad you guys are hanging out with me. It's pretty late. I know you guys are busy, but I appreciate it. ThePressureProject.com is our website. info@ThePressureProject.com is our contact email. ThePressureProjectMembers.com is our membership site. A lot of stuff going on behind the curtain. I want to share right now. I have a T-shirt that is for sale. Once again, I should have queued this up 2 hours ago, but did not. But I think there are 4 days left, maybe 5 days left of the My Tribe First shirt. And I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Eventually, maybe one day, I will be able to find the fucking thing. Right now, I'm on a different. All right, here we go. We're making progress, guys. I guess we're extending this now a little bit longer. I just want to put this link here so you guys have it, little jerky boys. You guys remember the Jerky Boys? Jerky Boys are pretty awesome. So it's on Teespring. I'm going to put this link right here. I should have had a better link prepped, but sometimes it is what it is. But there is, bam, there's that link. And you guys can feel free to put that in the comments, because that link is fucking terrible. I'm actually going to take that off of there because that's ridiculous. But I'll tell you what, when I get off, I'll put it in the comments on the list right there, the live comments. But I'm off on a tangent. All right, guys, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I'll talk to you guys soon. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power. Dun, 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 dun.